I'm going to actually say a few things first to respond to a few things. In a previous life, I was had a Marine background, and actually, to if you want to spread somebody's ashes at sea, there's about 35 permits you have to get. So it's better to act first and apologize later. Um, there's actually a rock out by somewhere past Gibson's on the other side of Gambier Island where professional mariners are often laid to rest, and that's what they told me. Like, no, don't ask for permission. You're just going to get yourself in too much work. The other thing before I start my talk is there's an organization in Canada called the Canadian Virtual Hospice, and they're involved in a lot of things around end of life, obviously. And they put together this thing it's called livingmyculture.ca, and they've gone to had conversations on care, culture, spirituality, when living with serious illness and grief, and they've gone to different ethnic communities from 11 different cultural communities to ask their stories. So it's sort of getting a cultural perspective on how people in other cultures deal with all this stuff you guys are dealing with. And again, it's livingmyculture.ca. And I also want to remark that this is one of the most comfortable, relaxed conversations I've been in about death, the conversation we're having today, so it's really great to see. So with that, I'm going to launch into my talk. First thing is, I don't know what to say. What a great opener for a speech. I was just going to say, I don't know what to say. Any questions? So what I'm going to talk about are difficult conversations. And what is a difficult conversations? Usually ones that are emotion laden because of the content and context. The content may be something ticklish and sensitive, like someone may be seriously ill or dying. The context may be you're introducing bad news, or maybe a sad event or time. And often we kind of dance around it, but it's the elephant in the room. You know that feeling that happens when you're talking about everything but that which is really foremost in your mind or in other people's minds. So as His Worship, Mr. Sullivan, said, I've been a counselor for about 17 years, and I've worked with patients, families, other healthcare professionals, often dealing with serious illness, often making that transition into end of life. I'm a professional counselor with training in mediation, conflict resolution. I say that not to boast, but I bring this up because I think I can claim some expertise and competence in having difficult conversations. But to be honest, I don't know what to say either. I don't have the magic words. And when those conversations are difficult, because I'm often afraid you're talking about impending loss or simply maybe just feeling emotionally uncomfortable or afraid of saying the wrong thing or maybe a subject that's too close to home or it just simply feels awkward. So what I want to help you guys do today, and what I've learned how to deal with when I don't know what to say, is I want to increase your capacity and comfort in talking to people who may be dealing with something hard, maybe even your own illness. I want to give you permission to be curious. Like, what's it like to be you right now? I want to increase your capacity to be close to others who may be going through difficult times. And the whole not knowing what to say, I want to give you permission to make mistakes. After all, you're human. And I guess the most important thing, I want to help you become more comfortable with your own discomfort. So, as I said, doing this for a living, I still have anxiety of what to say. As a professional, I guess this is part of my job. I'm used to it. And it's just a normal part of that conversation if it's a hard one. Because often what we're talking about are profound. It's about life and death and profound loss. So what do you say? Well, I think the most important thing, the first thing to know is your presence is more important than what you say, being there. To quote Woody Allen, 80% of the success in life is just showing up. So I'll tell you something about presence. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a celebration of life for a friend. He lived, he died at a good age, and one of his adult daughters was giving the eulogy. She told stories about what a great dad he was and all the fun they had and all the things they did. But she said, at the end, she sort of concluded, But besides that, what was most important was I always knew he was there. I could always rely on him. So in the end, she didn't talk about what he did, but how he was. Her dad had nailed the art of being. I learned much about presence from working with inpatients, many who are making the transition from active treatment to end of life, or were already there. And what I saw working with people was was really important for them to have close people around. But they didn't need to be involved in an intimate, like important, profound conversation. Often the family member was just dozing in the corner. We had these sort of chairs that slide out and like a easy chair. They'd be, it might have been a daughter, granddaughter working on their laptop or dozing, but it's just that presence. And at your home, it may be just hearing the sound of somebody in another room doing kitchen work or watching TV. So your presence is really important. So what about going beyond showing up? What's the secret of a good connection? How can you improve your connection? So it's about giving full attention, not worrying about what you'll say. You can just be curious, like, I'm wondering how you're doing with all this. Just paying attention demonstrates that you care. Don't try and fix things. Meet people where they are. Let them lead. And match their emotion. If someone says their life sucks, I've often sat in my office and listened to people tell them where they are right now and what's going on in their life. In the end, I'll just say, God, your life really sucks. And it's like, sort of give me a look like, you get it. Like if I walked up in the street and said to somebody, I think your life sucks, I wouldn't get that reaction. But it's really, just this sort of feedback. Yeah, it does. That's really important to hear. And accept that you cannot fix it. I'll tell another story about, I had a student a few years ago, and she was doing finishing a master's degree, had to do a practicum, and I wanted to work with her. She had great qualifications. I thought she'd fit right in and maybe do some of my work for me. So she came and she was very enthusiastic, but I noticed after a couple of weeks she started to back off. I'd suggest, why don't you go see such and such a patient or go to such and such a clinic? And she said, no, I think I need to read some more. I need to read that article on such and such. And I thought, something's going on here. Finally, I said, like, what's going on? She said, well, I just feel so inadequate. And my response to her was, good, you are. We aren't capable of fixing things. And once I said that, once I sort of gave her the freedom and the license to be inadequate, she was fine. She could go sit with people and do what she needed to do. And, bearing witness is incredibly powerful, even when the situation remains difficult. And if words fail, sometimes I don't know what to do. You can just say, like, I'm so sorry, or even, I don't know what to say right now, or I wish I knew what to say right now. And not every, as I keep going on, I'm repeating myself about this, but not every conversation has to be deep and meaningful. Or they can be actually unexpectedly meaningful. I had another patient who was, this oncologist said, we gave me a referral to see this patient because he had not a good cancer that was going to take his life in the next year or so, and he was married with a kid. He said, I think you need to go talk to the guy about, thinking about the end of his life and talk about meaningful stuff and how he wants. Anyways, I went to meet the guy, and usually he was an inpatient, and I usually start with a sort of casual conversation just about nothing, and we sort of started, probably brought up, started talking about the Canucks. The poor guy. It turned out he was a rabid Canucks fan. This is back in the days when Brian Burke was the general manager. And that's all we ever talked about. We had and I met him countless times, and I would try and sort of steer, but what does this mean to you? You're not going to live forever, whatever. And it just, well, I really think the Sedins are sort of, going to do such. And we talked about that, and he was from out of town, and he came back a couple of times, and that's all we really talked. I've never known so much about the Canucks in my life, and actually he actually got me kind of interested in them. And when at the end of his life, his wife said, your connection was so important to him, and we never went beyond the Canucks. So, that's what worked. So what about when people, when maybe all of us, are at a place where we just get kind of want to just complain, want to vent and complain. Like, how do you deal with that? What's appropriate? Who can we vent to? Can you go visit somebody who's in a hospital bed, who's really terminally ill, and start talking about how hard it was to get there today and how hard it was to park, and I got to pay my income tax, and I get really upset looking at you because you look so terrible. Like, what can you say to people? What do you deal with stuff like that? So in doing the research for this, I learned about something new for me, and it's something called the kvetching circle. Anybody know what kvetching means? Kvetching is a Yiddish term for a verb, and it means, in quotes, to whine and piss and moan. So when dealing with somebody with a grave illness, there's a protocol of kvetching rights. So I'm going to give you the sort of the structure, and then I'll give you the rules. So the structure is, imagine a circle, and the middle is the person who's and draw another circle around that one, and the person closest to them, it might be a spouse or an adult child or whoever, is the next person in the next circle. And this concentric circle's going out. So that then you repeat the process as many times you need. In each outer, as you put an outer ring, you put the next closest people. Parents and children before more distant relatives. Intimate friends in smaller rings, less intimate friends in larger rings. So now we've created the structure, a bunch of concentric circles. So the rule, now we've got that structure, is that the person in the center can say anything he or she wants to anyone, anywhere. He or she can kvetch and complain and whine and moan and complain that life is unfair and why me until the cows come home. That's one benefit of being in the center ring. You can say anything. And everybody else can moan and kvetch as well, but only to those in larger rings. So when you're talking to someone in the smaller ring, the goal is to help. Listening is likely the best way to help. Avoid saying, that reminds me of when. But if you're going to open your mouth, ask yourself what you're going to say, if it's going to bring comfort and support. If not, keep your mouth closed. Don't give advice. Give comfort and support. Say, I'm sorry, or this must be really hard for you, or can I make you a casserole? Don't say, you should hear what happened to me, or here's what I would do if I were you. Like, you should have gone to the gym more often or something. And don't say, this is really bringing me down. It was really fun actually researching and seeing all the inappropriate things to say. It was kind of fun. If you need to complain, if you want to tell someone how shocked you are, or how icky you feel, or whine about all the terrible things that have happened to you lately, that's fine. It's normal. Just do it to someone in a bigger ring. The rule is comfort in, dump out. And you probably are experiencing a lot of stuff you'd like to talk to somebody about what that's bringing up for you, and it's important to find somebody. Probably you already know this. Almost none of us would complain to the patient how rotten he or she looks. Almost none of us would say that looking at him reminds us of the fragility of life and our own closeness to death. So I think this concept simply expands on your own intuition and emotional intelligence. And don't worry, you'll get your own turn in the inner ring. That's one thing we can count on. So I've in their handout, there's a list of handouts I sort of begged, borrowed, and stole from wherever. There's lists everywhere on the internet of things not to say and instructions on how to talk to people. So that's all in your handout. And so there's a whole bunch of sort of rules, things you should or shouldn't say. I just want you to know that I probably violated most of those. I've got down here a handout on this. Rules are made to be broken. I've sort of learned a maxim in the last 20 years that's really helped me live my life. I've always used to sort of try and avoid doing the wrong thing and making mistakes and be scared of it and then feeling bad when I did. But a maxim that freed me is about life. Life is not what you do, it's what you do next. I often think, okay, I'm in this situation, what do I have to do next? It might be just, okay, walk away, or it might be I have to apologize, whatever. And it's great because it allows me to make mistakes, but carry on. So thank you.